Welcome to Code to Cloud, the podcast from Americaneagle Managed Cloud Services. I'm Tom McDonald, part of the team here, helping organizations get the most from the cloud without getting tied up in all the complexities. And what's complicated now is that most companies run in more than one cloud, on average 3 to 4. Now, using multiple providers allows for a best-of-breed mixing and matching of what each does best. And when designed and governed well, multi-cloud provides improved resilience and cost control. But more clouds mean more complexity. And security is usually where it bites first. So more clouds mean there are more things to overlook. There's a larger attack surfaces for the bad guys. So who handles all that security? You or the cloud provider? And what provider? Today we'll unpack how that works in practice. Joining me in the studio today are Nick Svanascini, CTO, and Todd Miller, Chief Solutions Officer for Americaneagle Managed Cloud Services. Guys, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Afternoon, Tom.
Let's start with the common misconception that it's the public cloud provider that provides security. That's not always the case, is it, Nick?
Well, it really comes down to shared responsibility. So the public cloud providers do take care of a lot of the security controls for you. And every one of these providers has a responsibility matrix on their website that tells you what they cover and what you're responsible for. So I like to use an example similar to like a condo building where the building management is responsible for the building itself, electrical coming in, plumbing coming in, the whole structure, anything outside, but then everything inside is all yours. So if you want to redo your bathroom, that's on you. If you want to redo your kitchen, just basic things, everything inside of your cloud tenant is yours, and that's your responsibility. And I think a lot of people, when they first move, they think they can just go right from on-prem to the cloud without making any changes. These cloud providers also offer some great tools to help you manage your security controls depending on what they are, what your compliance requirements, what you're worried about. Like Azure has Azure Policy, Amazon has AWS Control Tower. For a multi-cloud environment, there's tools such as Palo Alto RedScan. You can connect between clouds and use their tools across both. It really just depends on what your use case is. And it's important to have people who understand how these cloud complexities work to help manage this for you.
So Nick, reverse that analogy for me. What are the things that the organization is actually responsible for in the shared responsibility model?
So there are a vast amount of options for what people could be using their cloud environments for. It can range from large-scale databases, AI training, custom applications, serving front-end websites, intranets. What matters there is that the organization who manages a cloud environment is responsible for securing those applications using a mixture of both application design and the tools that the cloud providers provide in order to give you the correct tools to secure your apps.
That's perfect. Now I get it. Thanks. Todd, what are some of the pitfalls of the shared responsibility model?
Well, from a public cloud environment, you're talking about edge controls. You're talking about the infrastructure platforms themselves. Frankly, there's quite a few challenges and pitfalls that I've seen as it relates to organizations moving to the cloud. Primarily, they stem from many having a belief that moving to the cloud makes them inherently secure. And that's really not the case. Now, while the public cloud providers actually have a very good assortment of tools and good security controls, the reality is that many organizations lack the understanding of what these controls and tools do, frankly, that they're even available in there, but more importantly, that they have to be configured, right? They're mostly not configured by default. And so, security doesn't configure itself. Organizations need to understand what these tools and capabilities are. They need to actually actively employ them, use them, and then they need to be able to have the knowledge, understanding to be able to configure them accurately. Beyond that, what I've seen in my experiences has been that many organizations, as they're they're not in the cloud yet, they're actually working on a transition to the cloud. They look at security as like a bolt-on. And whether you're in the cloud, frankly, or on premise, security is not a bolt-on. It should be considered right at the very beginning as part of that architectural phase. And the reasons for this are not just because security should be intrinsic to what every environment your organization may deploy, but many things get more difficult if you don't consider security early on. An example in the public cloud would be Azure Network Security Groups. These are very effective, powerful tools for providing a zero trust-like capability into your cloud deployment, allowing you to create discrete areas within your network environment to isolate and control access to and from, essentially opening up connections and ports and capabilities only on an as needed basis. But if you don't, during your architectural phase, consider the use of these types of tools, then you're going to find trying to implement them later be much more difficult.
And typically, if I'm managing an on-prem security environment and moving to the cloud, the things that you're talking about are relatively new, aren't they?
To some extent, I mean, some of these features have been around for years, but the public cloud providers, they have a vested interest in providing capable security tools. So they're constantly evolving, uh, releasing new tools as well as revamping old ones. But I'd like to just kind of touch on the point you made when you're talking about that and on-premise. On-premise security and cloud security are completely different animals. And going back to kind of where I started, which is a sufficient lack of knowledge, understanding about the capabilities that exist and how to use them, that's often where organizations stumble, is they attempt to approach security using the same knowledge and expertise they already have, which isn't a direct correlation to security in a cloud world.
Another thing I'd like to add, Todd, is that one issue that we see a lot when it comes to securing applications, both on-premise and in the cloud, is executive buy-in, because many companies see IT as only an expense rather than a business resiliency and continuity strategy. Many companies who have had breaches throughout the years, they're out of business within 6 months. It's extremely important to keep this data protected. There's tons of lawsuits happening all over the world right now, class action level breaches every week. It's probably the most important thing you can do for your company right now is secure your data.
So, Nick, we talk about here at Americaneagle Managed Cloud Services that we manage the full stack, but with a specialization and being application-centric in our management. Can you talk about what application-centric means and how security is different when you're application-centric?
Yes, of course. So based on cloud environment tools, obviously there are many security controls that you can set up to prevent access from different paths into your environment. Now, any custom application adds even more paths into your environment that you also have to secure. Now, there's many strategies you would take here for this. So follow the OWASP top 10 standards for development, which is something that ideally every developer does, but obviously that doesn't happen in the real world. Another thing that we see a lot lately is mishandling of API keys. API keys are leaked all over the place. You see open unsecured buckets, but just really its sloppiness leads to most breaches. Like, remember, the bad actor only has to be correct once. You have to be correct every single time. And that's really what it comes down to.
Right. So that's application centric. Now let's broaden out to talk about multi-cloud environments and where you're trying to be application centric and you've got databases in Oracle and you've got identity management in Azure, and you've got AI and AWS. And how does that complicate things? Maybe you guys could both talk about that.
I mean, it really just adds a lot more paths of ingestion into your network that you have to keep secure and locked down in order to ensure that only data and requests that you want coming in can actually get in the first place, and only the data that you want to go out gets out.
Yeah, I mean, it's always the necessary level of access. I guess kind of this goes back to what I was talking about with some of the challenges in moving to the cloud and utilizing a cloud environment. It's really about approaching everything on a zero trust tolerance policy. Only, again, allowing access from servers to servers they need to speak to, from certain users or concentrations of users, only obviously allowing access from the internet as necessary, and only to those platforms that need it, creating a layered approach to security, building discrete groups of application capabilities so that they are in appropriate areas with, again, additional security precautions and capabilities, security controls in between each one of them.
When you sign yourself up with a particular cloud provider, they have great tools, but they're pretty much native to their environment. Can you talk about non-native tools that are important to provide a holistic view for security across a multi-cloud?
And one thing, especially for anything public facing, at this point, you need to have a web application firewall in front of it. I see many websites that don't, tons of applications, even for very large companies. And that should be step one, that you don't allow any access to your application directly to the origin outside of from your WAF and trusted networks, which ideally you don't have any trusted networks, but there will always be cases where you have APIs coming in, connecting, moving data in and out. But as long as you trust them, that's okay. But the internet should not have direct access to your application at all. There's tons of great WAF companies out there. They're all over the world, and they're very inexpensive for what they do.
Yeah, what I would add to that is, many people might not be aware, and certainly going back to kind of where we started, we're talking about security controls, leveraging all the security capabilities of whatever public cloud you choose is certainly important. But by no means, for most deployments, are those security controls sufficient in and of themselves. But kind of back to what Nick was talking about. So there are a tremendous amount of really good products out there. And something that organizations may not always understand is they're readily and easily available within the marketplace of that public cloud provider. For instance, if you want a Barracuda WAF or you want a Palo Alto firewall, it's not even as if you have to go through some partnership or so you can actually procure these assets directly from within the cloud marketplace. What's referred to typically is a BYOL, or bring your own license. You go and buy a license for a particular security endpoint or control from a third party, from your favorite reseller, and then you basically leverage that within the public cloud marketplace and enter your license key, and then essentially you configure that security control. So there are a tremendous amount of very good, solid options available, and oftentimes they're very easy to access as well.
But you don't want your vendor wagging your strategy. This is a strategy first approach, correct?
Yes, there's no one size fits all from any vendor. We work with many different vendors, many different WAFs, many different cloud providers, many different data centers, many different telcos, many different programming languages. It really just depends on what's best for the customer. And we help strategize with that customer for what is the best use case for them.
So let's step back from the cloud and just a general question about breaches. Have the weaknesses or the attack surfaces changed in the last 5 or 10 years, or are they pretty much still the same?
So putting the social engineering and the human element aside for a second, because frankly, the human element is always going to be the number one contributor to breaches. The landscape hasn't really changed that much. Frankly, it's gotten more difficult for organizations to reduce their attack surface, to lessen the likelihood of breaches. That's simply because software and applications have become more widespread. They've become more complex, and especially as we're looking at in-house development. Right now, you essentially are writing your own code in many cases, and then of course there's the element more recently of AI. I'm still seeing breaches in a lot of the same places Nick kind of alluded to earlier: sloppiness, misconfigurations, firewall rules, right? Very simple, low-hanging fruit, something that should never occur, but you used to allow an application in your firewall 7 years ago. You've since retired that application, gotten rid of it. Lo and behold, you go and look, and that allowance is still in there. Service maintenance engineers or support people that are providing remote access or remote support services, they may open up some type of remote access or even an SSH port, forget to close it when they're done. Now an would-be attacker has a vector into your environment. One of the biggest ones still remains unpatched vulnerabilities. And this is kind of where it comes back to the complexity of code has increased tremendously. It's harder and harder to keep this code secure, which is why organizations have to be even more so on top of their patch management strategies and vulnerabilities. One more thing I'll mention, then I'll certainly let Nick give us his feedback, his input, is something that I see a lot of, frankly, is an organization's failure to equally apply security controls throughout their environment. One of the areas I typically see this is as it relates to, say, engineering and IT folks, as compared to the standard employee.
They think
right?
they know better.
Well, yes. I mean, it's almost like two classes of citizens, which is the guys who know technology. What they're concerned about in their mind is, I have to protect those non-technology people from themselves. They're the threat.
Right.
Because us technology guys, we know not to click on this or not to respond to that phishing question or phishing email. But I've actually seen an example of where that type of approach, this organization had the network that their employees used was, very strong passwords, multi-factor authentication. But on the engineering network that had access via the management network to every single customer-facing service they provided, they had none of those controls.
It breeds complacency.
And all it took was one engineer to do something they shouldn't, and that resulted in a major service impact for that organization. So, not only equally applying security controls throughout the environment, but at the end of the day, the designers and implementers of your security posture cannot be the same people that are auditing said security posture. There needs to be an unbiased and specific focus on security.
Yeah.
Well, and to add to that, I personally have not failed to one of these breaches, knock on wood, but I have seen some very intelligent people who have fallen for them, and the emails are getting really good. I mean, I understand why people are falling for them. It's not just like bad English anymore. It's become a lot easier for people to fall for these things.
Yeah.
In addition, there are a lot of other areas that are overlooked for what I see as in case security controls do fail. At the end of the day, everything is breachable. Things happen, and you have to be ready for if that does happen, for how you're going to respond and recover. Many companies, sure, they set up their backups, they set and forget, they don't test it. They set up SIEM in order to get alerts if anything seems to be going wrong in their network. But are they actually testing these alerts and making sure that they can trigger them by doing something malicious just to make it do a false positive? If not, you might as well not even have them. Many companies have had breaches. They go look at their backups. It hasn't backed up in 6 months. They're dead in the water.
There's a reason we had fire drills as a kid, right?
Exactly. That's really what it comes down to. You have to know to get in line, go out that fire drill, and have good planning documentation around. Sure, your planning documentation is not going to be set up for every single exact instance, but at least gives you a high-level process on what you can do to recover in the event that something does happen to your organization.
Yeah.
And on top of that, tons of companies are great at setting up their security controls. They don't have anyone audit it. They trust their security guy and they say everything's going well. And I trust my security guy, but we still check and make sure that everything is set up correctly. It's just, you have to. And we have third-party auditors as well who they go and check our work to make sure that we're doing things correctly, because our customers want our third-party auditors to attest that we are following the security controls that we say we do, especially because we're protecting their data.
I can see where it's saying, if I'm running an IT department or in charge of security, I'm going to say, someday I really need to have a third-party auditor come in, and I just forget to do it. What is that step? How does one go find a third-party auditor?
So there are tons out there. It really depends on the type of, if you have compliance requirements, there's different types of compliance. There's PCI, there's SOC 2, there's NIST, FedRAMP, HIPAA, and all these different auditing firms. There's some that do all, most of them have different specialties. So the first step would be to engage with one of these firms and do what they generally call a readiness assessment. So you go through with them and it's more of a discovery phase where they go through all of your controls, what you say you do, some high level auditing and verification that you're actually doing this. And after you're done with that assessment and any remediations that you have to do, then you go and have the audit done. So you get a report of attestation stating from a third-party firm that is accredited that you are following all of these controls. And they'll generally take data samples, go through your document, go through HR docs, check system configuration settings. I mean, it is quite an investment, but it's important. We do it every year. I spend a few months on it, and it keeps us honest. That's really what it comes down to.
That makes sense. I guess a Debbie Downer question I could ask is, what keeps you up at night? But I want to turn it around a little bit. Regardless of what is around the corner as a security threat, how do you guys prepare for that? Do you stay on top of magazines? Do you read certain books? Do you, stay certifications? How do you stay on top of, so you're confident that you're in a good position for what's next threat-wise?
I listen to a few podcasts daily. I read some forums when I have time, and I keep in contact closely with a lot of cybersecurity consultants who I was close with in college, and we talk about things that we see in the wild, because the more things that different people see, the more you can become aware of.
Right. Todd?
Well, I'll add in something simple, but yet surprisingly underutilized, which is if your technology people, if your subject matter experts in your different areas of technology they use, whether again that's Cisco, Palo Alto, Microsoft, et cetera, if they're not plugged into the stream for notifications of vulnerabilities associated with those products, then you're not doing a very good job at readiness whatsoever. And I've seen organizations, frankly, that had absolutely no clue, hearing about it from third-party vendors, where, the place where they bought the firewall from was telling them there was a vulnerability that had just been communicated from that vendor, and that's the first they're hearing of it. If that's your readiness plan, then obviously you have some work to do. So I'd say that's a very easy one to start with. But certainly there's many good events, many good types of other activities that are going on. Magazines are great, but magazines are, they're a 3-month behind the curve. So that's something to be aware of. So, and in this day and age, digital, there's so many digital capabilities and informational tools out there. But at a minimum, be at least plugged into the vendors of whose technology you're using. So when they're releasing those CVE, those vulnerability notifications, you're aware of them and can therefore take very expedited action to patch and address those vulnerabilities.
Yeah. Well, thanks, guys. It feels like we only scratched the surface. We might have to do a part 2. So what we did cover today is that cloud security is not automatic. It's a shared responsibility. And as your cloud footprint grows, the complexity grows. And if you want to take complexity completely off the table, well, that's what Americaneagle Managed Cloud Services is here for. And if you want to know where you stand with regards to security, we offer a no-cost cloud and website security audit. Visit us at aemcs.com or give us a call. This has been Code to Cloud from Americaneagle Managed Cloud Services. Thanks for listening.